In an age of revolution, orthodoxy is the only rebellion left. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I'm probably not going to walk around. I mean, Doug had his whole, this, and keep the hands between you and the... I'm going to keep the podium. No. But I think that sort of illustrates a kind of point that I'm going to be making here. Doug gave his great talk that was very much focused on a kind of physical masculinity, and even the spiritual masculinity that Doug was talking about was really filtered through a physical lens, which I think is very, very, very important. And I think there's going to be a lot, hopefully in my talk, that you'll see that speaks to that physicality of the masculine, the importance of the physicality. But when you actually come down to it, there's a difference. Not all of us are like Doug. Doug's forearms are the size of my thighs. Okay? And there are plenty of other guys out there, right? There are lots of guys out there that I'm seeing who are, big, physical guys. That's, where God has said this is how you are going to express your masculinity in a very obvious way. It's going to be in that physical way. You're going to have a presence. And then there are guys who are built like me. Now, I've been in a few fights. I've won a few fights. I've started a few fights, and I've lost a handful of those. But, you know what? That's not necessarily the only way to be physical. I'm sure Doug would agree, and everyone would agree here, that the way to be masculine isn't necessarily just to be physical. So I'm going to talk about some rules for radicals. And I started off with the Lord's Prayer there. I started off with the Lord's Prayer, obviously, because that's how Jesus said that we should pray. I mean, you actually look at it like the commandments that Jesus gave us. One of the most important ones would be, well, how should we be praying? How should we be praying? John taught his disciples. John the Baptist, he taught his disciples how to pray. Lord, tell us, how should we pray? And so Jesus gives them that prayer, right? That prayer, you should be praying that prayer, at least 7 times a day? Now, I'm not saying 7 because 7 is like the number in the scriptures, the number in the Gospels. I'm saying 7 because that's the rosary. 1 at the beginning in the open, 5, 1 for each decade, and 1 at the end for the intentions of the Holy Father and to gain the plenary indulgence. And if you're not saying at the end for the intentions of the Holy Father and to gain the plenary indulgence, 1, you're really disrespecting the Holy Father, which isn't a cool thing to do. His intentions are listed at the beginning of each year. This isn't, necessarily Francis's specific personal intentions. There are a listed set of intentions. That's what you're praying for. Tangential point, but an important thing. Never feel that you're praying for some crazy thing that Pope Francis might be doing, some confusing thing. You're praying for very specific intentions that are published at the beginning of the year, 1 for each month. But the other one is you're giving up an opportunity for a plenary indulgence. So really, for the sake of a couple of minutes, literally less really, say a handful of prayers, Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be, you get a plenary indulgence. All the temporal punishment of purgatory is forgiven by a plenary indulgence. That's a real good deal, okay? That's a really, really good deal. So, the Our Father, you should be saying it at least 7 times a day. Do we really think about what it says? The last time I was standing, not here, but at the last conference, I spoke about that. Do we really think about it? So I want everyone to be thinking about the Our Father. But we're going to move along, and I'm going to come back to a dissection of the Our Father. A dissection of the Our Father prayer. What does it mean? So this talk is called Rules for Radicals, and that's kind of a clickbait title, and it really is. We've all heard of Saul Alinsky, right? We've all heard of Saul Alinsky. If you haven't, on Church Militant's website, we've got an FBI investigation that went all into Saul Alinsky and his plan. And his great book that he wrote was called Rules for Radicals. And it was about how a community organizer kind of character, you could use these various strategies, these various rules, in order to achieve your ends. You could be, and he wanted you to be a rebel. He wanted you to be starting revolutions. He wanted you to be turning over and destroying the established society in order to create the kind of society that he wanted to create. Now, to give you an idea of the kind of society that Saul Alinsky wanted to create, he dedicated that book to Lucifer. And he said, I dedicate it to Lucifer, the original rebel who was so successful that he earned a kingdom. Okay. Know where you're coming from, don't we, Saul? But let's think about that statement for a second, because Saul Alinsky, obviously a son of Lucifer, a son of the father of lies, but for the father of lies, Lucifer really tells the truth quite often. Go through the Bible, and when Satan actually talks, he's not often outright lying. You know, we've got this idea that if Satan said the sky was blue, you'd go outside to check. Well, Satan probably would tell you the sky was blue, but he just wouldn't mention that there were clouds rolling in. Satan, when he tells you something, he tells you the truth, but maybe emphasizes something a bit too much. Or he misses out a bit of something, and he lets you presume the rest. So the statement that Lucifer, in his revolution, won a kingdom is very, very true. And do you know where the kingdom is? You're living in it. Let's consider just for a second. Saul Alinsky had his rules for radicals, and he dedicated that book to Lucifer, who was so successful in his rebellion that he won a kingdom. I want to dedicate these rules for radicals, to Michael, the archangel Michael, who was so successful in his rebellion that he has won an army. And that is something better and more pure than winning a kingdom. When Satan started his defiance against God, and I'm not calling it a rebellion, and you'll understand why in a moment. When Satan started his defiance of God, he was so successful that he changed the very nature of the universe. He corrupted humanity, the pinnacle of God's creation. Our nature was broken. In Adam, the entire race sinned. We were born into sin. As Michael said in his talk, the destination for every single one of us, barring anything else, is hell. That's it. Now, you can argue about what's the fate of unbaptized babies and so forth, but ultimately, if you give a human being nothing more than the opportunity to live his life, he is going to sin, and he is going to die, and when he dies, he will go to hell. That is it. At that point, Satan's act wasn't a rebellion. The word rebellion comes from the Latin word bellum, meaning war. But at the beginning of it, there is the prefix re. And we see that word, that prefix re, in many words, and you see them, to restore. What does it mean? Well, it means to do something again, to have another go round. So the word rebellion originally means not to just go against somebody. No, the word rebellion means for a defeated enemy to make war on the victor. That's what a rebellion is. That's the whole idea. The Roman army plows in, we defeat you, and then later, a generation later, you rise up again, and it's a rebellion. Satan's wasn't a rebellion at that point. There'd been no war before. Satan hadn't been defeated. What it was simple defiance. Satan is not a rebel. Satan is a guy who defied the king of the universe and won his own kingdom, and now all of us are the rebels. We are all the rebels, and the rebellious army against the corrupted and ruined universe is us. It is the Catholic Church, led by Michael, the archangel, led by Our Lady, the Mother of God, led by Jesus Christ, the King of the universe himself. We are the rebels. We are the rebels and we are the radicals. That's an interesting word as well. Doug spoke about what radical means. It means the origin of something. It is the root of a thing. If you are a radical, you are going all the way back to the root of something. And in the sense of saying, well, we are radicals, what are we? At our very fundamental nature, we are against the world. We are against what the world says is normal. We are against what the world says is acceptable. We are against what the world says is good and true. And we absolutely are. What does the world tell you out there? The world tells you that it's perfectly acceptable to get married and then get divorced. The world out there tells you it's perfectly acceptable to engage in fornication or homosexual behavior. The world out there tells you it's perfectly acceptable to simply say, everything that I have came from me. It did not come as a gift from God. It says it's acceptable to show all of these great sins, pride and lust and hatred and avarice and anger. All of these things are glorious. They're these wonderful things. That's what the world says. And what do we say? No. We are the rebels. And so that is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about, as I started off, in an age of revolution, in an age where the entire order has been flipped upside down. And that age isn't just now. It's not just like, since Barack Obama got elected. It's not since Vatican II. It's not since the Protestant Revolt. It's not since the Orthodox Schism. It's since Lucifer said, non serviam. This is an age of revolution. It is an age of revolution where everything in the universe, it seems, is revolting against God. And we are the radicals. We are the ones who are saying at the very fundamental root of what is in the universe, we say no. At the very beginning of the universe, we say the universe went wrong at that point. When Lucifer said, I will not serve, the universe went wrong, and so we are the ones who are going to say, I will serve. I will serve. And that is why I speak about orthodoxy is the only rebellion left. So, on your tables, there are 19 rules. Now these, it's kind of interesting that while giving me a very short introduction, Steve managed to hit on the single one point that is of relevance to this. I'm the chief of staff at Church Militant. I've been doing it now for about 6 months. I haven't been fired yet, so I'm presuming that either I'm not doing a bad job or Michael's afraid that anyone else will do a worse one. But my job is essentially, in the very simplistic terms, is to manage the company so Mike can do what he does. That's essentially what it is. And these are the rules that I have developed, and they're not the only rules. They're mine. These are the rules that I have developed that I try to live my life by, and when I'm training the people under me, and there's a lot of them here, these are the rules that I attempt to impart to them. So I'm going to kind of go through these rules, and we're going to look at them, but we're also going to discuss this notion of what it is to be a rebel with this sort of orthodoxy. How does these rules, which you look at them and they're like, these are like those things I see on Facebook. Have a good, strong handshake. Keep eye contact with somebody like that. Never play cards with a man called Doc. Never play cards with a man called Doc. Bad idea. Actually, that's the joke. It's like there are 3 rules. I've told this to the marketing team and they all laughed. There are 3 rules. Never get in a fight with a man whose nickname is a piece of gardening equipment. True. Never get in a fight with a guy called the Shredder. Just don't do it. Never date a woman whose last name ends in I. Apologies to any guys who are married to one. It's just a joke. But you think, okay, Amy, fine. Amy with an I? Okay. Candy with an I? Yeah. And never play cards with a man named Doc. But these rules they're very staid. They're almost like, if you kind of lyricalize them, they could be the lyrics from It's Hip to Be Square by Huey Lewis and the News. You know, that great paean to conformity. You know, I used to be a renegade. I used to run around. You know, I'm watching what I eat. I cut my hair, I'm wearing a suit. You know, yeah, hi. Welcome to the things that have worked and have allowed men to get on in life. But these are radical now. These are radical, these are rebellious, these are revolutionary. There's a guy there who is putting his long hair back. Good man. So, these are radical, these are revolutionary, these are rebellious against the world. So let's go through and just take a look at them and apply them to the spiritual life. Point number 1, always be prepared for your own death. Who's been to confession today? Good lads? Who is going to go to confession today? Okay, I should see every single hand up in one of those two. I'm going to confession right now. I have, to the best of my knowledge, no mortal sins on my conscience, which means I have no mortal sins because I require knowledge of the things. But I'm going to confession. Why am I going to confession? Be prepared for your own death on a spiritual sense. You have come to Detroit. Detroit is basically Baltimore without the rats. Okay? This isn't to say, oh my gosh, guys, we need to get out there. I'm walking out with Doug. Doug's going to walk me to my car so I don't get mugged or anything. But you know what? Every single major city in the United States is a dangerous place. Doug mentioned the FBI crime statistics. Look them up for wherever you live if you don't want to sleep for a week. Look up the number of people who just die in car smashes, who get killed crossing the road, not even with violence. Look up the people who die because of heart attacks or a stroke. You could die tomorrow. And this isn't just me saying it. Christ has a whole parable about it. This guy builds his barns. And then God says, you fool, you're done. Your life is demanded of you. And that is the point. You could die tomorrow. Be prepared for your own death in a spiritual sense, but also be prepared for your own death in a practical sense. How many guys here have a will? Okay, again, I should see every single hand, and I don't care if you're 17. Get out there, get a will. They're nice and easy to draw up. For guys of my age, I'm 41, my age and older, do you have a durable power of medical attorney? Do you have one? If you don't have one, you could end up in hospital and someone's just flipping your life support off, ripping your organs out, Think about this. Be prepared for your own death. What happens if you die? What happens if you die to your family, to your wife, to your kids? What happens at your work? I have a death plan if I die and Boris is left without me. It's called Monica Drope. Monica Drope, there's Monica's family sitting there. The Dropes are great. They're like half of them work for us. Monica is my golden girl. She is my strong right hand. She is fantastic. If I die, Monica can carry on doing most of the stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis. Monica is great. I have raised Monica up and made her in my own image at work, which may be why when she goes home for Thanksgiving, her dad is like, what the hell happened to you? But I've inculcated these rules in her. There you go. I've been prepared for that. But then there's the adjunct. Rule 1A, always be prepared for the deaths of others. What do I do if my wife dies? Really? What do I do if my wife dies? Obviously, cry, say masses, etc., etc. Have you planned the funeral? Because, again, I keep coming back to Doug's points, because Doug gave a great talk that was talking about preparedness. Well, okay, let's talk about preparedness. Doug's saying, how long does it take you to find your gun and load it? How long does it take you to plan a funeral? Days? You want to try that when you're absolutely in the worst grief of your life? No, plan it now. Be prepared for your own death. Be prepared for the deaths of others. Every single person that I know, I have a eulogy in my head already written, so that when I stand up, I can give it. So when Mike's father passed away, like a year and a half ago now, Mike, I got to stand up at the funeral when everyone was tearing up, and I got to stand up and give a homily that I'd written, or a eulogy rather, that I'd written in my head, and I knew what I was going to say, and I could hit all the notes so that I could say the things that I wanted to say about that great man, and that everyone there would go, yes, and it could be a comfort to those people. Prepare for the deaths of others. Be ready for it. And this isn't to say, you're some kind of like Mr. Spock logical thing, and like, he has passed on, let us move. No! Grief is absent, but prepare for it. So that when the grief hits you like a freight train, or the impracticality if stuff isn't getting done, or you don't have the income from your wife or, your husband or whatever. Obviously, I'm talking now to the women who are watching on the live stream there with that. But prepare for that. So you've got a plan. Point 2, never compromise. Now, this is the one that is going to have all of the ACLU people watching this and going like, oh, here comes the toxic masculinity. Never compromise. Big man strides in. Let me tell you what we're going to do, ladies. You're gonna do what I want. Why feel? You'll feel the back of my hand. No. Let me tell you what compromise is. There's 2 people, Alice and Bob. And Alice wants to do A. She wants to do thing A. And Bob wants to do thing B. And Alice and Bob decide to compromise, and they do thing C. And ain't no one happy. They're not. They're not doing what Alice wanted. They're not doing what Bob wanted. You know what? Never compromise. You sit there, you discuss, you decide, you weigh the options, and if the other person's idea is better, you do that. And if your idea is better, you do yours. That's it. And you know what? Some of the time, you're going to capitulate. Maybe most of the time you capitulate. Maybe most of the time, maybe all of the time, you as a guy say, you know what, we're not going to do what I want to do. Let's say you love Mexican food and your wife loves Chinese, and she wants to go out to eat maybe once a month, because she's watching her weight, whatever. My wife, she's watching her weight. We don't go out to eat very often. So when we do go out to eat, we go where she wants. Why? She would be more than happy to let me do it. She'd be more than happy. But you know what? I get to say, you know what? I'll capitulate to you. I'll give you what you want. So we don't compromise. We don't go along there and say, well, yeah, we don't want this. We'll go with the middle. No. Never, ever compromise. Compromise is a terrible thing. Either get what you want or capitulate. 100% or nothing. Nothing in the middle. Number 3, be on time. This is like one of those things that always appears in those lists of, good, solid handshake, look a man in the eye, know how to change a tire, except know how to change a tire should be on here as well. But it's one of those things. But you know what? It matters. Be on time. 90% of success is turning up. 90% of that is turning up on time. You turn up late? What message does that send to anyone? You're dating someone. You're meeting them for the first time. You turn up late. For obviously the younger members out here who aren't married yet. You turn up late. What does that say? Yeah, I don't care about your time. You turn up late for work. Hi, you're applying for unemployment real fast. They'll fire you. You turn up late for school. What does that say? You turn up late for school, for college. You're paying tens of thousands of dollars each year to do this, and you turn up late? And here's the other thing. Because these are radical rules, these are the rules of a revolutionary, no one else is doing them. That's it. Most people aren't doing this. Most people are like, yeah, I don't have to turn up. You're the guy there, on time. So you're the guy that the boss goes, oh, he's conscientious, he's there. You're the guy that the girl says, well, he didn't stand me up. He's not the handsomest. He's not the richest. He doesn't play guitar, but you know what? He has never stood me up, and that counts for a lot, guys. Really does. Number 4, and this is almost, I think, the most spiritual of them all. Remember your objectives. What are you trying to do? Now, obviously, in the spiritual realm, you're trying to get to heaven. Very simple. You're trying to get to heaven. You're trying to get those around you to heaven, because that's how you get to heaven. And the practical realm, what are you trying to do? You're trying to save up to buy a house. You're trying to get a job. You're trying to impress the pretty girl who likes guys who play guitar. You're doing that kind of thing. Remember your objectives. Always keep them in the forefront of your mind. And it filters down into 4A, only do things which has an advantage. That's it. So you think, all right, I'm trying to save up to buy a house. Trying to save up to get my deposit for my house. So I'm not going to do the whole Doug Barry thing and try to give you financial advice here. But if you come along and say, I'm trying to save money to get a down payment, a deposit on a house, and I think I need, $5,000 or whatever. Well, okay, every single penny should be going to that. You're not sitting there and going, oh, well, I wanted to buy a new lawnmower. Let's put some money over it. No, what's your focus? Remember your objective. Do what has an advantage. If you've got side hustles that you're going along to do, and your goal is, I've got to get the money, focus. Focus, 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 focus. And in the spiritual life, that's absolutely it. Focus on the spirituality. Focus on, does this make me holier? And if it doesn't make you holier, stop doing it. It's that simple. It doesn't even need to be a sin, you know? Sitting there watching TV, there's no sin in watching TV, you know, unless you're watching, you know, some, you know, immoral thing or whatever, you know? But there's no sin in sitting there watching TV. But is it making you holier? No, it's not. So this isn't to say never watch TV, but try to make that part of your spiritual life. To say, you know what, I'm going to be very selective about what I watch. I'm going to watch this as a recreation, and then I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to do something else. My work, when I'm working, does this make me holier? And of course, 99% of jobs, they don't make you holier. They just give you a paycheck. But you do it for the love of the Lord. You go that little bit further in what you're doing when you're dealing with people. What you do is you go along and you say, you know what, I'm in a customer service position. Let's really help these people out. Let's really try and do this. You know, somebody's rude to you at work. You take it, you absorb it, you don't reflect it back at the person. You demonstrate that Christ-like willingness to take the abuse, to take the punishment. That makes you holy. Always. Keep in your mind, always, how can I use this thing that I'm doing right now to make me holy? Number 5. This one is for all the team in production. Put your hands up, guys. Here we go. There we go. All of the production crew. All of the guys who are responsible for shooting all our video, getting everything ready. Always be properly equipped. And the adjunct. 5A, never carry one of anything important. This is purely practical. It really is. Always be properly equipped. You can kind of make it spiritual. You know, always carry a rosary. Always have your scapular on you. You know, absolutely. But, guys, it's no good if you turn up on time. I don't care how skilled you are. Doesn't matter. If you're there to turn a screw in a wall and you don't have a screwdriver, you may as well have not turned up. It's that simple. And you know what? If you went somewhere to turn a screw, you know what? Take 2 screwdrivers. Never carry one of anything important. That's absolutely the rule. You know, Mike expresses it as 1 is none and 2 is enough. And it's exactly the same thing. Never carry one of anything important, guys, because it might just break. You might lose it. Or the other thing, you know what? You can give it to somebody else who wasn't prepared. And then you look like the prepared one. Or, if you're wearing a jacket and a vest, you can give the jacket to the girl who's cold. You didn't think I was wearing it because it was sartorially elegant now, did you? Point number 6, and this really comes back to point number 1. On the spiritual level, treat every choice as your last chance. Spiritually, your life could be demanded of you tomorrow. It could be demanded of you right now. You know? So treat every choice as your last chance. You make the decision, you say, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. Anything that I'm going to do. I'm going to go see this movie. I'm going to go out for dinner with my friends. I'm going to take this job. I'm going to travel to that city. Okay, treat that choice as if it was your last chance, as if this was it. Not, I'm going to have an ability to overturn this at the end of the day. That is how the rest of the world that is corrupted by Satan's lies, that's how they think. Oh, mañana, I'll do it tomorrow. You know, I'll get to confession tomorrow. It doesn't matter right now what I do. I'll go to confession on the weekend. No, you may not get the weekend. And in the practical sense, okay, you know what? I'll do this work tomorrow. I'll blow it off. I'll do this work tomorrow. What happens if your boss comes along to you and says, where's that project I asked for? Well, boss, you said it wasn't due until tomorrow afternoon. No. I need it now. Something happened. I need it now. Have you done it? Now, if you say, well, no, I haven't done it. Okay, your boss is going to go, yeah, you know, he hadn't done it. He had until tomorrow. Clearly, he was planning. But if you're the guy who did it, oh, yeah, I did that, boss. Right there. That was my choice. I made the choice right now to do this. I did it. It was done. There you go. Suddenly, you're the conscientious one. You're the cool one. You're the one there. You're the one who gets noticed. You're the one who's engaging in this rebellion of orthodoxy. You know? Number 7, keep your word. It's very simple, it's very direct, it's very hard. Keep your word. If you give your word, you keep it. I don't care what the cost to you is, you keep it. You gave your word. I don't care if you have to work all night, you keep your word. I don't care if it costs you everything you have. You keep your word because your word is the only thing that you really have to give. Ultimately, you can come along, you can go, well, look, here is my history. Here are all the things that I have done. I can do this. I can point to all the stuff on the Church Militant site, all the shows that I've been involved with, all the articles that I've written, all of the behind-the-scenes stuff that I've done. Here is everything that I have done. And what does it come down to if somebody wants me to do something else? It comes down to me saying, I promise I will do that again. That's all it is. All you are. People say you're only as good as your last job. No. You're only as good as the weight of your promise. And if you break your promise once, everyone remembers it. So, keep your word, and I suppose an adjunct is, never give your word unless you're sure you can keep it. That's it. Don't be afraid of saying, that's a little big for me. Don't overpromise. Accept responsibility and apportion blame. So, something goes wrong. A man stands up and says, yeah, that was me. That's what a man stands up and does. He says, that was me. It was my fault. He doesn't try and equivocate. He doesn't say but. And again, this is your rule for confession. Priests do not want to hear in confession, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 2 weeks since my last confession. I lost my temper with someone, but. I lusted after a girl, but. What does but mean? But is this justification? You know, Paul Nick sitting in the front here, he once told me, and it's very true, that the moment you have the word but in a sentence, everything that came before it, you might as well not said. You know? I lost my temper with someone, but he provoked me. Oh, okay, so you say it was okay? Are you accepting responsibility for it? Did you do it or not? And the other thing, apportion blame. If somebody did something and they're not, don't allow someone else to take their blame. Don't allow you to take their blame. It's not fair and it's not justified to those people who are suffering because of somebody else's mistakes. You will not be popular with the person that you're passing the blame on to, but you will be right. And that is a more important thing. Know yourself and others. This feeds back into a lot of the other ones, particularly kind of the keep your word. What can you do? Let's be honest right now. What can you do? You know, Doug spoke about, you know, what are you going to do if a guy comes in with a gun? And everyone's kind of got this macho He-Man thing. Let's go. Let's go. Let's kick it up and fight. Really? Do you know you can do that? You're hoping you can do that? Don't go out and think that you can do that kind of thing. Don't go out and think, well, I can stand up and speak in front of 150 people if you've never done it before. I mean, absolutely. Go out and try once, but don't go out and say you can do it until you have. Don't go out and do it and say, you know, yeah, I can make that sale. I can make that sale, boss. I can run that project. Don't go out and do that unless you're sure you know yourself. And know others, because other people are going to be writing checks that their bodies can't cash. And they are. Know them. Because sooner or later, hopefully, you're going to be in charge of people. And people are going to go, yeah, I can do that. Really, can you? You sure? You sure you can do that? Because I don't think you can. And again, it's that honesty that comes back. Similar to apportioning blame, you got to look at people and be saying, can you really do that? And you're not going to be popular, and they're not going to like you, but you're going to be honest. And that's the exemplar of manhood. Place duty before pleasure. All of these rules are essentially that. You know what? Because it's fun to be liked. It's fun to be popular. It's fun to be the guy who everyone thinks, well, he's a decent, you know, good guy. He's kind. He's funny. He's wit. No. You know? It's fun to be the guy who always gets his way because you insist on your way. It's fun to be the guy who doesn't have to stay up late or get up early because you're placing your pleasure before duty. Heck, it's fun to be the guy that the world says you should be. It's fun to be the Hugh Hefner playboy. It's fun to do all of that stuff, to go out, to drink, to carouse. It's fun. It isn't what you were made to do. As a man, and this is the thing, these rules are kind of gender neutral, but ultimately, when it ultimately comes down to it, place duty before pleasure is the most masculine thing there is. What are you here to do? You're here to protect others. You're here to fight for the church. You're here to help others get to heaven. But ultimately, as a man, you're here to protect your families. Maybe it's your wife. Maybe it's your sister. Maybe it's your children. Maybe it's just the women that happen to be in your path. That's it. You know, coming back to Monica, I have Monica. I hustle and fight for Monica in the company. One, because she is really, really good at what she does, and she is like my second. She is my strong right arm. But also because she happens to be a woman who's been put in my path. And that's what I do as a guy. You know what? I have a wife, I have a cat, I don't have children, and I have Monica. That's it. That's kind of it. So that's where I exist and where I do. And there are other women that I'll stand up and fight for because that's what I'm created to do and that's what you're all created to do. And fine, all of the feminists out there are going to go, oh, this is just misogyny. This is just the patriarchy. Yes, it is. Yes, this is the patriarchy. Welcome to it. This is the patriarchy where I will place my duty before my pleasure and I will fight for others. And that should be you. And even if there are people out there listening who are not Catholic, who are not Christian, who are not religious, even if any of you decide at some point in the future you lose your minds and you think, I'm throwing this whole Catholicism thing over and I'm done, remember that. Because at the end of the day, that is what heroism is. I put my duty before pleasure. That is what everything in the Hollywood blockbusters points to. Who's watched some of those Marvel movies? I'm sure like every hand's going to go up for that. Okay, tons of people watch those Marvel movies. Okay, so all of those heroes there, Iron Man, Captain America, even like the Incredible Hulk, who is basically just this big green rage monster. What's the deal? I put my duty before my pleasure. That's the whole theme of Tony Stark's arc. You know, he had the playboy lifestyle and he said, no, I'm going to throw that over and I'm going to become the hero who will defend the weak, who will help these people who have been put in harm's way, now by his own mistakes in the earlier movies, but after that, he expands it out. And that's why, not to get off into the weeds too much, the very last act of Captain America's story is so disappointing. Because what does he do at the end? He doesn't come back to fight. He goes and lives his life of pleasure with Peggy Carter. He disappears off back into, I've just spoiled the movie for everyone. But he chooses to do that. Where was your duty, O exemplar of American manhood? Your duty was cast away. That's what it was. Always put duty before pleasure. Point 11, it's never personal. It isn't personal. All of these things will make you very unpopular because you're going against the grain. You are going against that constant state of revolution that the world exists in. You are rebelling yourself. You are pushing against the world. You are pushing against the father of lies, who is the prince of this world. You're pushing against everything. No one is going to like you. It's never personal, though. I can probably count on one hand the number of good friends that I have. I'm not going to embarrass people by saying who they are. Everyone's trying to guess. But I can probably count on one hand the number of good friends I have. And here's the question I would put to you. How many friends do you need? And who do you want those friends to be? All of my friends, they would hit all these notes. They would place their duty before pleasure. They would keep their word. They would accept responsibility. All of those things. There are a whole bunch of people out there who do not like me, and they do not like me because I am honest, because I am direct, because I do not cut them any slack. And a lot of those people at the end have come back to me and said, I still don't like you, but thank you for what you did. I'm sure plenty of you are going to say much the same. I hope you would say the same. But it's never personal. It's not about person. It's about duty before pleasure. Pleasure is I've got friends. Duty is I have people that I serve. Never project. Never go beyond what somebody said and never answer more than is asked. And that actually ties into question 19. Always ask the question you want answers, and always answer the question that was asked. Be very specific with what you're doing. Be very specific about how you conduct your conversations, because people, one, will try to trap you, but also people will ask questions and they don't think and they don't realize. So be very specific in how you answer and what you answer. Answer the question that was asked, and never ask a question that you don't want answered. Now, this will annoy women to no end. I will tell you this right now, it will annoy women to no end, but it is a good annoyance. Because what it does is it reminds them, very importantly, and reminds you, that men and women are different. And that is beautiful, and that is glorious, and that is wonderful. There is a wonder of difference between men and women. You know, men are hard and solid, and women are soft and curvy, and women are emotive, and they ask these, long rambling questions, and they're trying to get an answer, but they won't quite dance, and men just go straight to the point. And it will annoy women, and women will annoy you, and that's kind of the point. The foundation of so many relationships between people of different genders, between men and women, is that friction. That's what it is. You don't get fire without friction. And I'm not just talking about some kind of romantic or erotic or sexual relationship there. But the whole point is, women are different from us, guys. They approach things differently. It's God's plan. God didn't just make Adam and Eve and go, whoa, look what I did. They're totally different. How's that going to work? No. He knew. He knew what he was doing. Probably had a bit of a laugh about it. But he knew what he was doing. He created, because he said, it is not good that the man should be alone. Okay, so what did he do? He created woman to be with him. And okay, there's a lot of guys out here, I'm sure, who are not married and who never will be. There's lots of guys who make that choice. There's a lot of guys who aren't married now. I know there are priests in the audience, of course, now never be married. But what we have, unless the Amazonian Synod comes through. But anyway, the point is that every man has women in his life. And if he doesn't, he should get some. Because what they do is they remind you of that otherness. They remind you of that, let's feel, let's emote our way through, let's weave our way to the point. And every woman should have men in her life to go, wham, right there. That's it. I asked a question, I've answered it. We're done here. Mike pointed out it's not about the nail thing, where the girl's got the nail in her head. It's a great video, watch it. I have tremendous arguments with women about that, because they're like, well, the guy he should just listen. And my answer is always, without exception, the women should not ask questions they don't want answered. It's my job. You asked me a question, I answered it. More arguments with my wife contain that phrase than any other. Are we both right? Yes. Are we both wrong? Yes. That's the whole point. That's how the universe and society and civilization continue. They continue because of that beautiful interaction between human beings, and at its most fundamental level, it's the fact that human beings, male and female, are like sandpaper, and they go at each other and they make friction, and that is the spark of creativity and civilization. And ultimately, it comes down to, how do we approach questions? Point number 13 for Father James Martin: credentials mean nothing when you are wrong. And they don't. You know what? There's a whole bunch of people here. So there's Brad sitting back there. Brad has more degrees than I have fingers, okay? So Brad is incredibly well credentialed. But under no circumstance have I ever seen Brad, when he's making a theological point, say, well, guys, I have an STB, and I have a degree of this, so, no, never. It would never even occur to Brad to do that. You know what? Because Brad knows his credentials mean nothing if he's wrong. His arguments stand or fall on what they are. And that's the whole point. Never be intimidated by somebody with credentials. Some guy comes along, they're a doctor, they're a priest, they're a lawyer, are they wrong? Now, that doesn't mean you just disregard them, but really? Never be intimidated by somebody with credentials. Never be intimidated by somebody with a degree, with a bit of paper, with whatever. Never. Credentials mean nothing when you're wrong. And if you can show that somebody is wrong and they fall back on this defense of kind of like, well, I'm much more educated than you. You wouldn't understand. Then make me understand. Am I that dumb? Really, am I that dumb that you can't explain this concept? Or conversely, is this concept so fiendishly complicated that it can't be grasped by the average mind? If a concept is so fiendishly complicated, it cannot be grasped by the average mind, it's probably not really very useful. No offense to any quantum physicists in the audience or whatever. I mean, those are great and very valuable fields of study. But you know what? If you can't wrap your head around how it basically, is it really? If your ultimate response is, well, you can't get it because you're just too dumb, you're just too uneducated, that's not an argument, that's a dismissal. Which leads neatly into 14. It's always a teaching moment. There's always an opportunity to teach someone. Every single time. Favorite phrase of mine, the staff is probably sick and tired of hearing it. What do we learn from this? Something goes wrong. What do we learn from this? That's the point. What do we learn? Something went wrong. What do we learn? Something went right. What do we learn? What do we learn? It's always a teaching moment. If you have knowledge, if you have experience, pass that on. Although not everyone deserves to be taught. That's the adjunct to it. Somebody who comes along and is essentially saying, I'm not going to explain to you because you're not credentialed, because you're just too dumb. You just need to listen to me because I'm the big man on campus. I've got the bit of paper. Okay, I'm done with you. And that's a very truthful thing. And this is going to come along to you in the entirety of your lives. You're going to come to this moment and you're going to meet people out there and it's going to be a complete waste of time to talk to those people. Because you could spend an hour talking to them and you wouldn't move the needle an inch. You could spend a day, you could spend a week, you could spend your life and you will not change that person's mind because you cannot reach why they hold that view. Father James Martin, for example, we always dog on him. Let's carry on. Father James Martin, for some reason, he's got it in his head that homosexuality is okay. Now, he'll equivocate and beat about the bush. Like, well, I never said it was okay and I didn't chant. Yeah, we all know that. It's obvious. I can't even get you to discuss the issue I want to discuss because you block people on Twitter. When you do have the discussion, you're screaming and squirming like, an eel on an electrified hot plate. And I can't have the conversation with you. It's a waste of time to talk to the guy. That's it. How many more people can I talk to? I could spend a week talking to Father Martin, or I could spend 10 minutes talking to somebody with a genuine question. And you do the math on that, the time that I would spend talking to Father Martin, how many people could I talk to? A dozen? 100? 1,000? And I can reach them. So if somebody came up to me now, obviously nobody in here, but somebody outside maybe came along and said, hey, yeah, I've got a problem with the Catholic Church, and they're really getting in my face, and they're, talking about like Mary's the, she's just the goddess Isis reinterpreted, and Jesus didn't rise from the dead, whatever. And it's clear to me that they're never going to be reached. I'll be like, I ain't got time for you. I probably got a dozen guys here who've got a question that I can answer in 5 minutes, and they're asking it in goodwill, and I can reach those people. Again, comes back to point 4. Remember your objectives. If my objective here is to impart information to people, it makes more sense for me to impart information to people who are going to receive it. That's it. Always keep that in your mind. Some people do not deserve to be taught because they are ungrateful and they are hidebound and they've got their mind locked on some crazy, stupid thing. Point 15, will is not did. This comes back to the issue of keeping your word and the promise. Oh, I will do that. You ain't done it. I will do the washing up, dear. My wife is watching this now and is like saying, yeah, it's you. But I will do the washing up, dear. I will take out the garbage, I will, boss, get you those quarterly figures. I will get you that. Did you do it? Have you done it yet? No? Then you ain't done it. Don't come along and expect to get the accolades for having done something until you've done it. The promise means nothing until you keep it. Will is not did. And really, in many ways, it's this practical thing. There are so many people out there today, and people dog on the millennials all the time. I mean, I don't know like who self-identifies as a millennial anymore. I think we've kind of moved also into the next phase of whatever they call the generation that comes after the millennials. But they talk about the millennials, and I think it's very unfair. I know a lot of very good millennials. I work with a lot of them. But they talk about this participation trophy nonsense. Well, I tried really hard. I would have if I had, and did you? That's it. And it's not a value judgment against you. It's not to sit there and say, you know what, you didn't come first in the race, so I think you're a terrible person. You just didn't do it. You know what? The guy who's got a busted knee and who can't run, and you didn't come first in the race, I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying I don't care about the fact you got a busted knee. I'm saying you didn't come first in the race. That's it. No value judgment. It's just straight up honesty. Number 16. This is an interesting one that Catholics sometimes reject. Just and unjust laws exist to be followed. So let me explain. There are three kinds of laws. There is a just law. Don't murder people. Baltimore. Don't murder people. That's a just law. Okay? There's an unjust law, which is abortion is legal. You know? That's an unjust law. And then there's a non-unjust law. You must wear blue in the marketplace on Sundays. It's crazy. It's not some great imposition on your morality. To wear blue in the marketplace on a Sunday isn't a sin. You know? Another classic non-unjust law, 55 miles an hour on this stretch of freeway, 35 in a school zone, no overtaking on the left. Those are non-unjust laws. You know what? They exist to be followed, guys. And they do. You do not get a pass of going through life and saying, I'm this rebel for orthodoxy. I'm taking back the universe for God through my actions by doing what should be done. By sitting there and saying to the authorities of the world, yeah, you know what? I don't agree with your law because, and it's, you know what? To break it isn't like technically speaking. Yeah, you know, it is. Don't do it. They exist for a reason. 55 miles an hour on the freeway exists for a reason. 35 miles an hour exists in a school zone, exists for a reason. It's called dead kids. You know, and this isn't just to sit there, because everyone breaks traffic laws. But they exist to be followed because what they do is they say to the world, when the people look at you, yeah, you know, he's a stand-up guy and he follows rules. And that's what the world is looking for. The people are looking for, even this flawed, corrupted, revolutionary world is looking for guys who follow rules because you know you can rely on them. You thumb your nose at a law because you determine that it's to be thumbed at? Really? How does that make you different from the Protestants who say, well, you know, divorce or marriage is okay because I've determined it. I've determined that this law is not to be followed. You don't like the law? Change the government. You get the opportunity every 4 years, change the government. Get involved. Number 17, never break anything you can't fix. This is a classic one for guys who are, you know, repairing the lawnmower or taking the door off and all that sort of stuff, doing the home thing. But never break anything you can't fix. But it applies to other things as well. If you want to break something and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to break it in order to find out how it works, or I'm going to break it to make it better, make sure you've done your homework and you can put it back together. And that doesn't just mean lawnmowers and doors. It means relationships. It means yourself. It means other people. If you're going to go along and you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to help somebody out by giving them advice, and I'm going to break them down to do it, make sure you've got a plan to put them back together. Because otherwise, you know what you look like? You look like a barbarian. You tear into town, and you tear things down, and you dust your hands off, and you say, hey, we're good. You know? You've got to have that, what the US referred to as nation building. When we went into Iraq in 1991, I say we, I wasn't American at the time, but it was my grandfather's planes who led the assault. We went into Iraq in 1991. There was no clear plan to rebuild Iraq afterwards. Now, had we pushed all the way and we toppled Saddam without a plan, what would have happened? Iraq would have gone to hell in a handbasket, like it did when Saddam was taken away. Now, I don't want to make some, great political comment about were we right to go into Iraq or whatever, but you've got to have that plan. You're going to tear something down and hopefully something good is going to come in its place. You've got to be the guy to fix it because you don't know that anyone else will. Number 18, the last one, because we've kind of already touched on 19. Exceptions test the rule, they don't make it. So there's a great phrase that is often used. The exception proves the rule. And everyone interprets this differently. There's a whole handful of these phrases. There's blood is thicker than water. You've heard that one, of course. And you think, I should rely on my family. No, that's not what it means. The blood in blood is thicker than water means blood shed in battle. That's where it comes from. The water is the water of the amniotic sac. So actually what it's saying is your battle brothers, those with whom you have shed blood, are more important than those you were born into the family of. That's what it says. That's one of the phrases that's misinterpreted. This other one, which is exceptions prove the rule. The exception proves the rule. No. There is a concept in armory called proving, called proof marks. And if you go and you see suits of armor, usually they are ceremonial suits of armor that were made for dukes and kings. And you can see a handful of them in the United States. Most of them are, of course, in the old world in Europe. And they have on them, the later suits of armor, they have dings in them. And these are the proof marks. And the whole thing is that the proof mark proved the armor was solid. And what they used to do is they used to set the armor up and they used to shoot it. And in the later periods, you'd shoot it with a musket. You'd shoot it with a gun. In the earlier periods, you'd shoot an arrow at it. And you would prove that the armor was good. It's the same concept as when you're baking. How many people here bake? Good? Legit? More of you should do it. It's awesome. No, you should, actually. It's a thing. I mean, you should do it because it teaches you so many valuable skills, and there's a beautiful gendered quality to baking. So the baking of bread, that traditionally the lady of the house would be the one to bake the bread, and the man of the house would be the one to cut the loaf. That was the division of labor. And actually the words lord and lady refer to that. But there is something beautiful in the baking of the bread. Mike's talked about this when he's talking about Eucharist, that you're taking the flour that has been ground from wheat. It's been destroyed into this thing. It's been reduced to the flour, and then you're beating it, and you're kneading it, and you're putting in the yeast, you're leavening it, and then you're letting it rise. You're letting it prove, which is where the phrase comes from. You prove that the yeast is still alive. But you're doing that, and you're intimately connected with that cycle of destruction and rebuilding. That even though it's traditionally women would do it, and women would do it because it was a very long process and guys were out doing other things, nowadays, guys, learn to bake bread. Learn to bake bread as a spiritual devotion to understand that beautiful thing of there is no rebirth that comes without death. Nothing comes without destruction. It's a beautiful thing. Also, homemade bread is delicious, and your wives will not have time to make it. But the exception proves the rule was the idea to say, well, the exception proves the rule is true. That's what it is. The exception proves the rule is true by testing it. That's the thing. It doesn't prove the rule to say, well, here's my rule, and then there's an exception, so that proves the rule is true. No. It proves the rule, it tests the rule, and when the rule doesn't work, you modify the rule. That's the thing. And that is kind of the last point that I want to end on. The rules of your life must conform to your life. So when you come along and you get to a situation and this doesn't work, I haven't been able to interact properly with people. I haven't been able to advance in my spiritual life. I haven't been able to advance at my job, and I've been doing everything that I did before. How about you change it? We're back to Baltimore again. It's something like, 50 years of uninterrupted democratic rule in Baltimore? All of these cities that are rat-infested hellholes. Lots of crime and all this sort. Is there anyone from Baltimore here? Am I just dogging on them? Cool, good. Okay, so I'm just going to get shivved in the car park. I can see this. But all of these cities, they're doing the same thing again and again and again. All of these bishops. Well, we keep trying. We keep doing what we've been doing for the past 50 years, and vocations keep going down. Yeah, have you tried doing something else? That's the whole point. This whole thing of the exception tests the rule, and when it is tested, and when it is found wanting, and you know what, it doesn't work, change the rule. Do something different. Don't just sit there and go, well, this is comfortable, this is easy, this is what I have done before. No. Get out there and change the world, and you are going to have to change yourself. As I said at the beginning, there was an act of defiance at the beginning of time. Before time itself, there was an act of defiance, and Lucifer said, non serviam, I will not serve. And at that point, the entire universe has sat there and orbited around that thing. Everything is orbited around this default of I will not serve. That is what you were born into. You were born to be a person who will not serve. You were born to be a person who will not bend the knee. You were born to be a person who will constantly scream his defiance to God until he ends up in hell and burns and does it for eternity. That is what has happened to you. It happened before you were born, and there is nothing you can do about it. What you can do is you can do what is going forward, and that moving forward is you can say, I will be a rebel. I will be a radical, and I will reject that foundational root thing. I will reject your cry of non serviam. That is it. Now, these are just a handful of rules. They're the handful of rules that I use, that I try to inculcate people. I'm sure that you will have rules from your father, from your priests, from yourself. Maybe you won't have them put down in a specific thing, but ultimately what it comes down to is it comes down to the only acceptable form of revolution or rebellion left is orthodoxy. In the words of Huey Lewis in the News, it is hip to be square. That is the point. That you have to struggle and strive to revolt against the world and say, I will serve God. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It's right there in Scripture. At the very beginning of time, before time itself, we will not serve. Right now, you have to be the rebel. And right at the beginning, I started with the Lord's Prayer. Coming back to it, right at the end. Listen to the Lord's Prayer and how revolutionary that is. Our Father who art in heaven. Okay, so I claim God as my Father? That's radical and revolutionary. When Christ said that, it was stunning to Jewish ears. To call God Father, to call God Abba. Abba is a Hebrew word that is, I have this on good authority from many Jews, that Abba is like saying Daddy Dearest. It's such an intimate, really? You can talk to God like that? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. In the rebellious world of Lucifer, nothing is holy, nothing is sacred. Thy kingdom come. That's revolutionary right there. Thy kingdom come. Not this kingdom that is here, and we'll maintain it, and we'll guard our borders. No, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. That is a challenge. That is a revolution to the non-serviam of Satan. On earth as it is in heaven. Again, another challenge to the prince of this world. This will not be your world forever, or at least this little bit of it that I have my hand around. And you can go through the entirety of the Lord's Prayer. It is such a revolutionary prayer. That is more revolutionary than anything Alinsky did. It is more revolutionary than anything that Marx or Engels did. This is more revolutionary than any army that has marched across the face of this globe. Because what it does is it says that ultimately the very nature of this universe as a rebellious universe against God will no longer be that way. You are rebels. You are radicals. You are revolutionaries. You are going out there to make war. And while the way that we make war is really to be kind of conforming and normal and conservative and staid and appropriate and all of those things and reliable and traditional and da-da-da, never, ever, ever forget that you are a warrior in an army whose goal and whose ultimate conclusion will be the complete overthrow of the order of this universe. You are a revolutionary. Act like it. Thank you.